Pope Francis has called for an end to what he described as the senseless war in Ukraine. The 86-year-old head of the Catholic Church addressed the faithful from the central balcony at St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. He condemned the use of food as a weapon of war and called for solidarity to assist all those suffering.
The Pope is one of the most revered people on earth, so it is not surprising that the whole world came to a halt after His Holiness suddenly released an alarming message. Many believe this message is timely and a divine revelation from God Himself. While there are skeptics about the source, the message itself cannot be denied. What shocking message did Pope Francis have for the world this time? Join us as we reveal the alarming message Pope Francis shared that has caught the attention of the whole world. Pope Francis's alarming message. Recently, a message people claim was from Pope Francis has been quickly spreading around WhatsApp and other social media sites. With its urgent tone and clear call to action, it has caused a lot of trouble among Catholics and other people around the world. The message talks about how worried the Pope is about battles getting worse in different parts of the world, and stresses the need for everyone to pray together to stop more bad things from happening. While the WhatsApp message has caused a lot of debate, the Pope's plea can also be found on the Vatican's website. This makes it clear that the Pope wants to bring people together spiritually for peace. The word being passed around starts with inviting priests and believers alike to pray together. There's more. God has moved Pope Francis to encourage more people to pray, especially the Holy Rosary. The message says the Pope has asked the church doors to stay open and people to pray together before the chapel. This call stresses the importance of praying for peace in places where wars are still going on, naming the Middle East, Ukraine, and Crimea as areas of worry. The main objective is to ask God for forgiveness, give world leaders the Holy Spirit, and show them how to choose peace over war. This message is very powerful because it is clear and simple. It gives clear directions for everyone to take some time daily and pray the Our Father and Hail Mary 3 times no matter where they are. There is even a prayer for the Holy Trinity to break up and stop the bad forces that control and trap the world. Many people like this organized method because it makes the call to prayer easy for everyone, no matter where they are or what time it is. The Pope's call is not just for religious leaders or devoted followers, but for everyone on the planet. People have different thoughts about the WhatsApp message. Some people have fully embraced it, telling many about it and committing to the prayer practice. Other people have questioned its authenticity, wondering if it does reflect what the Pope said, or if it was made up as it went viral online. But a similar message sent through the official Vatican website has given the post more weight. Pope Francis talks about the dangers the world is facing today on the Vatican website. He focuses on how peace, unity, and kindness are being lost. Not only does he ask people to pray for peace, but he also asks them to care for the poor, sick, and hurt, which reminds us of the importance of service and empathy. The Pope's message on the Vatican website is very serious, which fits with how serious the situation is. He talks about how people are becoming more divided and how greed and evil cast a dark shadow over the world. He talks about how spiritual help is needed to eliminate this sadness and how Mary, Queen of the Rosary, can symbolize hope and direction. The Pope thinks people can improve their faith and help fight the forces that spread violence and hatred by praying. Pope Francis wants people to be united in their faith and actions as the message spreads. He wants to unite people spiritually against the chaos in the world by asking priests to open churches and lead prayers. People are also being asked to take responsibility for promoting peace through this effort. Taking time out of your daily life to pray improves your faith and gives other believers a sense that they are working toward the same goal. It's important that the Pope is focusing on the Holy Rosary in particular. It is a prayer with deep roots in Catholicism and is known for calming and bringing people together. This prayer can bring healing and peace, so Pope Francis wants everyone to say it. In the past, the Rosary has been linked to times when God helped people through hard times, and this appeal comes from those customs of hope and strength. The timing of the Pope's speech and other important events in the Church's calendar make it even more important. He chose this time to draw attention to the Jubilee year of prayer and repentance, a time for healing and spiritual growth. The Pope calls for prayer around the world at 7 p.m. local time, asking Christians worldwide to pray at the same time, creating a spiritual chain of hope and faith. Let's look into the current wars in the world that prompted the Pope to share the alarming message. Escalating wars in the world and consequences. The world faces a unique combination of battles, all of which have very bad outcomes. The growing wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe are not separate tragedies. They are strongly linked crises that affect people all over the world. Tensions have turned into widespread bloodshed in the Middle East, killing many people and making countries less stable. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine is still going strong, affecting millions of people and involving countries from around the world. Both areas have a lot of history of conflict and are now flashpoints that risk the stability of the whole world. The terrible cost to people is one of the most obvious and direct effects of these wars. Homes are destroyed, families are split up, and many people die. As more and more people leave their homes in search of safety, the refugee crisis gets worse. Often these people don't find welcome or get stuck in the middle of political conflicts. Many neighboring countries are already struggling with their economies, and the influx of refugees significantly burdens these countries. The fragmented and slow global reaction shows that the current systems are not up to the task of dealing with such widespread suffering. Besides the obvious loss of life, these wars have had big effects on the economies of countries far beyond their borders. The energy markets, which were already unstable, are now even more so. The Middle East plays a crucial role in oil and gas production, yet supply lines are threatened and prices are skyrocketing. In Europe, the war in Ukraine has made energy problems worse, and countries are scrambling to find new sources. Higher energy costs cause inflation to rise, making the cost of living problem worse worldwide. Trade worldwide, which is important for modern countries, is also in danger. Shipping lanes in the Middle East are getting less safe, slowing down ships and driving up costs. Ukraine's main agricultural products have been destroyed, which has caused food shortages and raised prices.
On the situation farmers are facing in Ukraine right now, it's estimated the country's farm industry has already lost $4.3 billion from war damage.
These problems don't just hurt the budgets of countries at war, they also hurt the most vulnerable people worldwide. Countries that have to import food and energy are on the verge of crisis because they can't meet their people's basic needs. Geopolitical pressures are also very high because of the wars. Big powers are taking sides and intensifying the conflict. Countries that used to try to find peaceful answers are now stuck in a cycle of rising tensions and mistrust between each other. There is a big chance that things will worsen, which could bring in more powers. The stakes are higher than they've been in decades because of the use of advanced weapons, rising deaths, and the chance of unplanned partnerships. In this situation, Pope Francis's message is very alarming. His call for immediate action shows not only how important it is to end violence, but also how quickly the whole world needs to work together. All countries are responsible for working for peace, according to the Pope, who warned that more damage will be done if nothing is done. His advice comes when the world seems to be falling apart, but these crises are all linked, so everyone needs to work together to solve them. The wars are not just sad stories from the past, they are changing our world. The effects are felt in every region regarding the economy, society, and government. Apathy and indifference are spreading in the face of unimaginable pain, testing people's morals. It's important to remember that this is not just a political problem, but also a very human one, according to Pope Francis. We can't ignore the call for kindness, peace, and a coordinated effort to stop things from worsening. If nothing is done, the world could get even worse with the problem. The fights in Ukraine and the Middle East have shown us how fragile peace is and how terrible it is when it doesn't exist. It's clear from Pope Francis's message that time is running out and that everyone will have to pay for not doing anything, but it's not all gloom and doom. A future of hope. When the Pope recently asked people to pray and work together, it sent a strong message that hope is possible and needed when things are going badly. His message tells us that even small actions one person takes can make a big difference when combined with many actions. Everyone, regardless of their beliefs or history, can find ways to help bring peace and healing. Even though the world may seem divided, there is hope when people work together to help those in need and make their neighborhoods safer and stronger. People from all walks of life can make a big difference through grassroots organizations. Such actions as setting up food drives, giving money to shelters, or praying for peace together show that real change happens at the community level. Helping people who have been forced to leave their homes and are helpless, like refugees from war zones, is very important in today's world. This work not only gives people who have been uprooted by war material help, but it also brings them comfort. Volunteering at a local charity or giving money to foreign aid groups are small things that can make a big difference in the lives of people who are in need. Charitable work is a key part of getting help to people outside of communities. People who have money and people who need help can often connect through social aid groups. People can help these groups by giving them money, giving their time, or spreading the word about current crises. For example, organizations that help war and poor victims by giving them food, medical care, and a place to live always need support. People who help with these projects are part of something bigger. They work together to ease pain and bring hope to places that need it the most.
WFP is providing food assistance to all of the new arrivals to Tower-Goss camp and plans to mobilize more food from around the region so that we can meet all the food needs of the refugees as they continue to cross this border.
To add to the small-scale and charitable actions, we need coordinated actions that change policies and goals. Promoting peace at the policy level can get organizations and governments to spend money on programs that support equality, education, and peace. People can join efforts that put pressure on leaders to prioritize peace over violence and ensure that resources are used to rebuild communities damaged by conflict. These things might not seem to have anything to do with everyday life, but they are necessary to fix the problems that cause violence and unfairness. Faith groups and religious organizations also play a big role in bringing people together. Many times, places of prayer are safe places where people can talk about their problems and work together to solve them. The Pope's focus on prayer and working together shows how spiritual practices can bring people together on a deeper level. These groups show us that faith can be a strong force for good when used to help others and promote understanding, whether it's through shared practices or public service projects. To create a calm future, we also need to deal with problems like poverty, unfair treatment, and bias, which often lead to conflict. Supporting open education, making sure everyone is treated fairly in their communities, or encouraging kindness and understanding in everyday interactions are all things that anyone can do to help make a difference. These small steps may not seem like much, but they show the hope and work needed to make peace a fact in the world. Everyone reading the Pope's words should consider what they can do to improve the world. The Pope's words demonstrate that achieving peace is a gradual process involving the contributions of individuals, collectives, and leaders. If we hold on to hope and act purposefully, we can overcome the problems we face and create a future where kindness and togetherness rule. Pope Francis addressed people on Easter to share his feelings and opinions on specific topics. As you know, Easter Sunday is a special day for Christians because they believe it's when Jesus came back to life after dying on the cross. While addressing them, Pope Francis talked about how God is always with us, but he also said some surprising things about Jesus. What's not surprising is that this wasn't the first time he said something that didn't quite sit well with the public. He is quite notorious for often saying things that make traditional Catholics uncomfortable, but this time, even his supporters, Orthodox Catholics and critics, were taken aback by what he said. He boldly made some revelations about Jesus' death that no one knew about or had ever heard before. It made many people question what they've always believed about Jesus. Before we get into all of that, first, we need to look at how Pope Francis leads the Catholic Church, and I must tell you that he leads it in a very unusual way. From growing up in Buenos Aires to becoming a world-renowned priest, Pope Francis was known for his simple way of life and care for the poor and marginalized. Instead of living in the fancy apostolic palace like previous popes, Pope Francis chose to live in the much simpler Vatican guest house. He also dressed very modestly, showing that he didn't want a lot of wealth and luxury. During his time as Pope, Pope Francis talked about important values like kindness, including everyone, and protecting the environment. He believed that the Church should welcome everyone, no matter where they come from or what their situation is. Pope Francis even tried to connect with people from other religions, not just Catholics, to help everyone understand each other better. For a religion that some think of as only for certain people, Pope Francis's way of accepting everyone was controversial to some more traditional Catholics. Pope Francis tried hard to keep the crucial beliefs of the Church while also making changes to fit the modern world better. He cared a lot about helping people who didn't have much and spoke up for them. Pope Francis once said that some of the happiest people are those who don't have much, but his new ways of looking at things also caused some arguments about whether the Church should stick to its old beliefs or change to fit in with the world today. While many people liked Pope Francis's changes to the Catholic Church, not everyone was happy with his new ideas about the Bible and Jesus. Some people committed to the old Catholic beliefs didn't like the changes, but it seems like some of the arguments have calmed down after his latest talk about Jesus. Before we talk about the teachings that seem to calm things down in the Catholic Church, let's understand why there's been some controversy around Pope Francis, his teachings, and his way of leading. Trying to keep the important beliefs of the Catholic Church while also making old teachings fit in with modern life has been a big challenge for Pope Francis. Instead of only following the exact words written down, Pope Francis wants Catholics to think deeper about the stories in the Bible. He says these stories have deeper meanings that can teach us valuable things about life today. For example, Pope Francis says the story of how the world was created in the book of Genesis.
In the beginning there was darkness, and then there was light. Experience the awe-inspiring tale of creation as told in the book of Genesis.
Is not just about how things began. He thinks it's a powerful story that teaches us about our special connection with God and our responsibility to care for the earth. Looking at the Bible this way makes its teachings more meaningful for our lives now. But not everyone agrees with Pope Francis. Some people, called conservatives, think the Bible should be understood exactly as it's written, without thinking about its deeper meanings. They worry that looking deeper into the Bible's stories might change the fundamental beliefs of the Church. On the other hand, people who support Pope Francis think that understanding the deeper meanings of the Bible's stories can make its teachings even better and more relevant for today's world. Before we proceed, you need to know some of the Pope's most controversial interpretations of the Bible. Some of them will shock you. What are the Pope's most controversial teachings that have actually divided the Catholic Church? The Pope is known for saying things that make people talk. Some of his statements are quite all right in the Christian faith, but some cause big discussions and make people question his faith, and weirdly, whether he'll go to heaven. Recently, the Pope said something specifically for LGBTQ Catholics. It's the first time there's been any talk about blessing same-sex couples.
Catholic priests can now bless same-sex couples. Pope Francis formally changed Vatican policy today,
Which, knowing the common religious aversion to the topic, is a huge deal. Some people even want to remove him from being the Pope because of this. To understand why, let's look at some of the things he said. Some years ago, there were reports that Pope Francis said something strange. He reportedly said that humans could disappear, and God would make new species. This came from an interview in an Italian newspaper with a friend of the Pope, Eugenio Scalfari, who is an atheist. In another interview, Scalfari reminded the Pope about this and asked about what happens to bad people who go to hell. He wondered if their souls would suffer forever. In response, Pope Francis reportedly said that people who feel sorry for what they did and ask God for forgiveness won't be punished. Instead, they'll be forgiven and can be with God. But those who don't feel sorry and can't be forgiven will stop existing, according to the Pope. He doesn't believe in hell. Instead, he thinks that souls who do bad things just disappear. After this interview, the Vatican quickly said that what Scalfari wrote wasn't exactly what the Pope said. They said the words weren't written down right, so we shouldn't consider them exactly what the Pope thinks. Even though the Vatican said this, there was still some arguing about the interview. First, they put it in their newspaper and website, then took it off, and then put it back again before finally taking it off for good. This, of course, caused a lot of confusion. Some people connected what Scalfari wrote to something the Pope wrote in a book called Amoris Laetitia. In that book, the Pope said nobody should be punished forever because that's not what the Bible says. This made some people think that maybe the Pope has different ideas about hell. In another interview in 2015, Pope Francis seemed to say that even though nobody goes to hell forever, people who don't want to be with God might just stop existing after they die. So, even though the Vatican said Scalfari got it wrong, there's still some confusion about what the Pope really thinks about hell. That's not all. Pope Francis has also said things that seem different from what the Church has always taught about the world's top problems. In 2013, Pope Francis did another interview where he said the biggest issues in the world right now are young people not having jobs and older people feeling lonely. You wouldn't expect the Pope to say these are the most severe problems. Then, he reportedly said that trying to make people become Catholics doesn't make sense and is silly. This goes against what the Bible says about telling everyone about Jesus. Even more surprising, the Pope allegedly said that there is no particular Catholic God, only God. This seems to go against the idea that Catholicism is the only true religion. Many Catholics were confused and upset by what the Pope reportedly said. Maybe the Pope didn't fully believe in some of the major parts of Catholicism. Some people thought perhaps he has a different, more general view of spirituality that isn't strictly Catholic. And if that's true, not many will be surprised. Continuing with his beliefs, the Pope received more criticism in 2016. Now remember, he always says that abortion is very wrong, but his focus on being kind and forgiving has caused arguments. In 2016, during the Special Mercy Year, the Pope said that priests could forgive women who had abortions.
Making another dent in his progressive image, the Pope went off script in his weekly address to the faithful gathered on St. Peter's Square to deliver his strongest criticism yet of abortion.
Some people liked this idea, but others didn't. Now let's discuss what the Pope thinks about money and how the world works. He didn't hold back when talking about capitalism. He said it's not suitable for poor people. He even said caring too much about money, cars, and phones takes people away from God. He said the world needs to be more fair for everyone, with rich and poor people having more equal lives. These words made people who care about fairness very happy, but some said the Pope was talking too much about socialist ideas. One of his most surprising moves was when he said that he was totally against the death penalty. In 2018, Pope Francis said that the death penalty is always wrong, no matter what. This was a major change for the Catholic Church, which before said it was okay in some situations, but not everyone liked what the Pope said. Many people, both inside and outside the Church, criticized him for it. Some high-ranking Catholic scholars were really unhappy with him. They thought he was going against important Catholic beliefs. So they, along with some priests, wrote a letter saying that the Pope was going against the Church's teachings. This letter was published on April 30th on the website LifeSite News. In the letter, they said that Pope Francis was preaching differently from Catholic teachings about marriage, sex, and forgiveness. They said this was the third time they had to talk about this. First, in 2016, they wrote a letter to top Catholic leaders, saying that the Pope was teaching the wrong things. Then, in 2017, they said the Pope was teaching 7 things that were against Catholic beliefs, but they didn't call it heresy. But in 2018, they said that what the Pope was teaching was definitely heresy. That's not even half of it. They also said that the Pope doesn't feel sorry for his actions. The letter said the bishops should say that the Pope is guilty of heresy and punish him. They said that he should be removed from his position as the leader of the Catholic Church. 19 well-known Catholics signed this letter, including Aidan Nichols, a founder of the Dominican Order, law professor Brian McCall, and scholar Anna Silvas. Within 12 hours, more than 1,500 other people added their names to an online petition supporting what the letter said about the Pope. The letter pointed to things the Pope said and did that go against what the Catholic Church teaches. They also talked about the Pope saying that divorced and remarried Catholics can take communion, even though the Catholic Church says marriage should last forever. The letter said the Pope was changing important Catholic beliefs about right and wrong. They said he was making people think that what's right and wrong depends on each person instead of having clear rules from the church. The supporters of the letters didn't just do this. For their hands, it got more serious. What do recent supporters of the letter now have to say? Supporters of the letter said they were bravely defending the common Catholic beliefs from changes by Pope Francis that they think are wrong and could confuse people, but critics said it was unfair to attack the Pope's authority. But here's the thing. Pope Francis's ideas aren't new. They're part of a bigger revolution in the Catholic Church that started after the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. During this time, the Church began looking at the Bible in new ways. They used history and culture to understand what the Bible really means. This way of looking at the Bible has led to different, more detailed ideas about what it teaches. But this change has caused a big argument. Even now, some people, called conservatives, are still claiming Pope Francis is changing the Catholic Church's beliefs to fit in with what people think now. They didn't like it when, in 2019, there was talk about letting married men become priests in some places. They also didn't like it when Catholic priests were allowed to bless same-sex couples. This argument is really about whether the Church's beliefs should always stay the same, or if they can change as the world changes. Traditionalists, who want to keep things the same, say that Pope Francis is making the Church's beliefs less important by changing them. But Pope Francis's supporters say that the Church's beliefs can change to fit in with what's happening now. They say that this makes the Church's beliefs more meaningful for people today. They think that by changing, the Church can still be a guide for people, even as the world changes. How the Pope looks at the Bible challenges Catholics to live out the essential beliefs of their faith. He says that we should follow Jesus' example of loving everyone and treating them with respect. He wants us to understand the Bible in a way that makes us want to be better people. His teachings tell us to balance following old traditions and living in the modern world. He wants our faith to be something we practice every day, not just something we believe. Even though some people didn't like what the Pope said before, his recent ideas about Jesus surprised everyone, even his critics. So what did the Pope say about Jesus that was so surprising? He didn't just talk about new ways to understand the Bible. He also said we should act with kindness and love, just like Jesus did. He says that Jesus cared a lot about poor and struggling people and that we should too. During that time, Jesus wasn't some distant figure. He was deeply connected to the struggles of ordinary people. He experienced firsthand the oppression and unfairness under the brutal Roman occupation. He used this perspective to urge Christians to follow his example by reaching out to help and understand those around them, especially those less fortunate. We can see practical examples of this in the shocking revelations made by Pope Francis about the true nature of Jesus Christ on two very noticeable occasions. And the first eye-opening moment happened when the Pope visited a correctional center. Despite just recovering, he went straight to presiding over Mass and washing the feet of 12 young inmates from various backgrounds, nationalities, races, and faiths, including Islam and even 2 women. As he performed this powerful foot-washing ritual, Pope Francis gave a significant sermon.
This was the setting for Pope Francis to preside over the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday. The Pope reflected on Jesus washing the feet of his disciples and Judas's betrayal, and he stressed that nothing is beyond forgiveness.
He began by explaining that foot washing isn't just an old tradition, but a gesture showing how we are to be with one another, caring for each other. But then, the Pope took it to another level entirely. He plainly said it's hard to see so much injustice in the world, with people taking advantage of others, people trapped with no way out, and many broken families. Pope Francis said that if anyone has avoided such hardship, it's not because they're better, but because of God's grace. Here's where it gets more interesting, though. Looking those inmates in the eye, the Pope stated that everyone can slip, each one of us. And this awareness that we can all slip gives us the dignity of being sinners, and Jesus wants us that way. That's why he tried to wash our feet, to save and serve us. The Pope backed this up by quoting Jesus, saying that if we listened to his lessons, life would be wonderful because we'd rush to help each other instead of taking advantage, like the unwise teacher. Pope Francis preached that helping others and lending a hand comes from a noble heart, and Jesus today wants to teach us this nobility of heart. But he went even further. getting extremely personal and relatable. He said we might think if the Pope knew our inner flaws, but Jesus literally knows everything already and loves us as we are. Would you join us in praying for the world as the Pope has requested? Kindly share your answers, thoughts, and opinions in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel to enjoy more videos like this. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.